review of Ruth chapter 1. And we can read in Ruth chapter 1, the story begins with a famine in Israel. There was a great famine, and a family from Jerusalem. Of course, a family is composed of father, mother, and 2 children. And a family from Bethlehem. Interestingly, the word Bethlehem, as we had heard last week, it means house of bread. But because there was no bread in Bethlehem, well, a family, the name of the father is Elimelech, his wife is Naomi, and their 2 children, Mahlon and Chilion. And Elimelech means my God, a king. Naomi means pleasant. But this family decided to look for a place to survive from the famine in other land. And so they decided to just make this kind of decision. Let's migrate to other place, and actually it's not very far. It's probably just around 50 miles. And so the first question I would like to ask with you is, what do you do when there is a crisis? A crisis means a turning point. What happens when you are confronting a turning point in your life? Well, this family, when there was a famine in Bethlehem, they decided to move out from this house of bread, which had no bread, and they went to Moab. Well, the decision was a mistake. It was a big mistake. And of course, after a big mistake, it is usually followed by sad experiences. Nothing is wrong with securing food for the family. Please do not misunderstand me. As a family, Elimelech was thinking about the future of his family. Very good. But mistake number 1, they went to a place they should have not been. They went to Moab. Moab was never a safe place to stay. When they reached Moab, the 2 children married Moabite women. Mistake number 2, God prohibited His people Israel to intermarry other men or other women in other nations. Deuteronomy chapter 7 verses 3 and 4. This is what God said. You shall not intermarry with them, giving your daughters to their sons, or taking their daughters for your sons. Verse 4, Deuteronomy chapter 7. For they will turn away your sons from following me to serve other gods. Then the anger of the Lord will be kindled against you, and He will destroy you quickly. So, mistake number 2, they married Moabite women. So what were the sad experiences? Sad experience number 1, Elimelech and 2 children died while in Moab. Sad experience number 2, Naomi would struggle harder without the husband and the support of the children because they already died. She only had 2 daughters-in-law with her, Orpah and Ruth. Now, hearing the Israel's famine was over, Naomi decided to go back to Bethlehem, to her country. On the way home, she asked and advised her 2 daughters-in-law. She told her, go back to your families. She said, I will never have children any longer. I'm too old to have children. Orpah, at first, did not want to go back. But she finally did. But Ruth, the other daughter-in-law, she decided to stay and to commit herself to Naomi, to her mother-in-law. Instead of marrying another man, Ruth could have been married another man in the near future, but instead of marrying another man, she committed herself to her mother-in-law. She is very young, but she committed not to another man in the near future, but to a woman of old age. Now let me tell you this. It is just not true that you cannot have a good in-law. It's not true. Sometimes the only reason we don't have a good in-law mother-in-law, father-in-law, is because we are not good in-laws ourselves. Ruth said, I am a good in-law, and I don't care. I think Naomi could be a better and a good mother-in-law. So she stayed together with the mother-in-law. Now, Ruth said to Naomi, when she was advised by Naomi, Ruth said, don't ask me to leave you. Let me go with you. This is verse 16 of Ruth 1. Wherever I go, wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. This is Ruth speaking. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Verse 17. Ruth 1:17. Wherever you die, Ruth speaking, I will die, and that is where I will be buried. May the Lord's worst punishment come upon me if I let anything but death separate me from you. Wow, what a commitment. What a commitment from Ruth. So, if you have your outline with you, let's get another lesson. I know Brother Mike last week gave you a lot of lessons, but let me add another one. Lesson in chapter 1. Never give up doing whatever is right. Never give up doing whatever is right even when you are facing a difficult challenge in life. Never give up doing the right thing. Just do what you are supposed to do even when you are facing a difficult challenge in life. You will find it out why we need to continue doing the right thing even when you are facing a difficult challenge in life. Later, we will find out. But that's one of the important lessons in chapter 1. Ruth did commit herself to her mother-in-law. Now, let me ask you a question. What would motivate you to stay with a mother-in-law who could not have a son anymore? What would motivate you or Ruth, whose mother-in-law did not have property anymore, no children? What would motivate you to do that? To commit yourself? And you know what? What I only know about Ruth is her love and kindness that will not give up no matter what. When they came back to Bethlehem, people could not believe what they were seeing. Naomi, they knew to be pleasant, was no longer pleasant. She is now bitter. She said, do not call me Naomi. Call me Mara, which means bitter. Now, there's a lot of sadness or there's a lot of weeping in chapter 1. How could we stand a crisis such as what Naomi had experienced? Well, Ruth committed herself to stay with Naomi, although she did not know what that decision would mean. Ruth stayed with Naomi. She did not have any idea what her decision would mean. All she knew probably was to stick around with a widow who had no children to support, who had no property to give, who had no money to sustain her day after day. All she knew is to stick with a mother-in-law because she wanted to back her with love and kindness. All Ruth knew was it was right doing that. It was right accompanying Naomi. Did she make the right decision? We can all identify with the story of Ruth. Life is extremely difficult, and yet there is no angelic visitation in the book of Ruth. There is no dreams. There is no miracle taking place. Everything is just natural. Everything is just making right decision, and let God do His own thing. Let's begin with chapter 2 now. In chapter 2, verse 2, Ruth chapter 2, verse 2, Ruth began to look for provisions. Ruth chapter 2, verse 2, it says, and Ruth, the Moabite, said to Naomi, let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor. Now, let's look at the special qualities of Ruth. Attention, young men. Attention. These are the kind of women you are going to be pursuing. Okay? Ready? Notice first Ruth's respect to older people. Look at her respect. The first word, her special qualities of Ruth, respect. Why did I say that? Where did we see that? She said, let me go. She said to Naomi, let me go to the fields. Ruth knew how to ask permission. Do you know of any young woman who does not ask permission from her parents? She will go wherever she wants to go, and she will not tell you what time she's coming back. Ruth was different. She was doing something what was right, but she was still asking permission from an older woman. She knew to whom respect is due, and she gave it. Yaman. Yaman. If you want to know you will be respected by the woman you are pursuing, you fall in love with, observe how she respects older people. Observe how she respects her mom, her grandmother, her grandfather. Because if she is not giving proper respect to other people, how could she respect you? You are not her relatives. Self-respect. Number 2, notice also her humility. Where did we find that? She said, let me go to the fields to gather the grain that the harvest workers leave. Well, how did we say she has humility? Well, because she was begging. You know, when the word said she was gleaning, verse 3. So she went out and began to glean in the field. You know what that word means? Glean. In the Hebrew, it's glean, but in the original word means to beg. If you are gleaning the fields, you are begging. You're asking some people to just give you the leftover. Well, she did not tell her mother she was never brought up to live upon crumbs. Well, when I was in Moab, Ruth did not say, when I was in Moab, I was not working this way. I was not begging. No. She was humble enough to do what needed to be done. She did not say to Naomi, I never begged when I was in Moab. She voluntarily did something to remedy their difficult situation. You could not hear her complaining and blaming anyone. Notice the right thing Ruth knew. This is from Matthew Henry. Poor people must not demand kindness as a debt. Let me say that again. Poor people must not demand kindness as a debt, but humbly ask it and take it as a favor, no matter how small the favor could be. I like that. Poor people must not demand kindness as a debt. Give me because I am poor, because you are rich, and because you are rich, give me this much. Poor people should not demand from rich people what they wanted to have. And Ruth knew that. That's why what did she do? She went out, she asked permission so that she can glean. She could get something so that they can eat. Well, third thing that we can notice, her industry. Her industry. Where did we see that? Well, she loved and she was willing to work. She did not say to Naomi, if you're not going to glean like me, if you're not going to beg like me, I will not glean, I will not work, I will not look for something that we could eat. Now, as a young woman, she could have been doing other things. As a young woman, she could have been doing some other stuff. But no, she was not doing that. They needed to eat, and she assumed the responsibility. God understands the struggles of the poor. Luke chapter 9, or Leviticus chapter 9. God understands the struggles of the poor people. That's why He set up a welfare system that says, when you harvest your fields, do not cut the grain at the edges of the fields, and do not go back to cut the heads of grain that were left. So whatever is left behind will be for the foreigners. Whatever is left behind by the harvesters will be for the beggars. This is God's welfare system. Verse 10, chapter 19, verse 10 of Leviticus. Do not go back to your vineyards to gather the grapes that were missed, or to pick up the grapes that had fallen. Leave them for poor people and foreigners. I am the Lord your God. So this is what Ruth was doing. She was picking up the leftovers. What the grapes that were missed, or the grapes that were not picked up by the harvesters. So she was doing that. Young man, let me give you a piece of advice. Young man, young man, if you see a woman of character that shows respect, humility, and industry, if you see these three characters, qualities of a woman, grab her. You have an advantage. Respect, humility, and industry. Maybe 60% you are never wrong choosing her. Maybe 40% you are wrong. But 60%, if you see a woman with respect, humility, and industry, marry her. You are only 40% wrong. I mean, you might still be mistaken. Alright? Let's introduce Boaz in verse 1. It says he was a rich and influential man who belonged to the family of Naomi's husband. This is Boaz. And the rule in Israel is the relatives of the man who died may redeem the properties they sold by buying back those properties. So it is the right of every person in Israel to buy the property back. For example, I am so poor, and I sold all the properties because I am so poor. Now, later on, I could buy back those properties if I have someone, if I have a relative who is so rich, who could buy back those properties. And you know what that kind of man is called? They are being called kinsman's redeemer. For he is a relative who redeems back the property to the previous owner. Now in verse 3, chapter 2, verse 3, Boaz noticed Ruth in the field. Here's Boaz. And she is seeing a woman. In verse 5, he asked one of his men, who is that young woman? He could have been attracted to Ruth? Maybe, but not quite. Ruth could have been wearing dirty clothes, and since she was working in the field, she could have been dirty. She could not have that kind of beauty that a man would be expecting. She could just be so attractive a little bit, but not quite. After making some investigation concerning Ruth, Boaz, we call him kinsman's redeemer, Boaz asked Ruth to see him. Come here, Ruth. And Boaz told Ruth, chapter 2, verses 8 and 9. My daughter. How did Boaz call Ruth? My daughter. I remember those days, when we are trying to just meeting a man or a woman. Hi kuya, hi brother, hi ate, and then he will marry the ate, or she will marry the kuya, the brother, and they call him my brother. But later on they're marrying him, but not a little brother. But here, my daughter, listen to me. Don't go and glean in another field, and don't go away from here. Stay here with my servant girls. This is what Boaz is saying. Wants them to see where they are reaping and stay with them. I have ordered my men not to molest you. And whenever you are thirsty, go and drink from the water jars that they have filled. Wow, what a great thing Boaz is offering to Ruth. Now, in chapter 1, there was so much weeping. Naomi was weeping, Ruth was weeping. There were deaths, there were funerals. Remember, Elimelech died. The two children of Naomi died. There was so much weeping. In chapter 2, there was so much wondering. There was so much wondering. Why did we say that? In verse 10, Ruth bowed down with her face touching the ground and said to Boaz, "Why should you be so concerned about me? Why should you be so kind to a foreigner? Why? In the first chapter of Ruth, why is this happening to me? Why did my husband die? Why did my children die?" And in chapter 2, still the question is why, but it's a different thing. It's a different agenda. Why is Boaz so concerned? Why is Boaz so generous? Why is Boaz so kind to a foreigner like me? And Ruth was asking. Now, this is a good example from a young woman like Ruth. Caution young women. Alright? Young women. Listen, when a man, single or married, is giving you a great favor, offering you a great favor, single man or married man, if he is offering you as a woman a great favor, what should you ask? Why? Why is he doing this to me? Women, open the mind, close the feeling. You know what I mean? Ask the motive. Is he going to use me? Is this man going to harm me? Or what? Why is he doing this to me? Open the mind. Close the feeling. Is this man for real? Or is going to be playing with my heart? Why is Boaz doing this to me? Okay. Boaz revealed. Verse 11 and 12. Are you ready? Why is Boaz doing this to her? Verse 11 and 12. Boaz replied, "I've been told all about what you have done for your mother-in-law since the death of your husband, how you left your father and mother and your homeland and came to live with a people you did not know before." Verse 12. "May the Lord repay you for what you have done. May you be richly rewarded by the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge." So Ruth asked, why is Boaz doing this to me? Is he in love? Is he going to harm me? Is he going to manipulate me? Does he have malicious intent? No. Verses 11 12 said, one word, and I think it's in your outline. Women and men of character are being rewarded. Women and men of character are being rewarded. I have to admit that I could be a little bit lying if I would not admit that I could sense some sort of romance. I know there is a sort of romance here as a motivation from Boaz. Boaz was attracted to Ruth, maybe attracted to Ruth because of her beauty. No. I think Boaz was attracted to Ruth because of her character. Caution again, young man or young men. I know outward beauty is terribly important. Outward beauty is terribly, I don't know, I'm not sure if I'm using the word, but it is terribly important. To have a beautiful woman is terribly important. But inner beauty is absolutely an important and a better choice. Why did I tell you there is an attraction? Or why did I tell you there is a romance? I know there is a motive of romance from Boaz because Boaz asked Ruth, are you ready? Boaz said to Ruth, verse 14. Alright? He said, at mealtime, Boaz said to her, come over here had some bread and dip it in the wine vinegar. So why did I say that there is romance here? Because Boaz asked the question, what are you planning for lunch? And she dated Ruth for lunch. At mealtime, Boaz said to Ruth, come and have a piece of bread and dip it in the sauce. So she sat with the workers, and Boaz passed some roasted grain to her. She ate until she was satisfied and she had some food left over. She had some food to go. There was romance, but there was nothing disgraceful about the lunch date. Why was there no disgraceful or anything bad about the lunch date? For they do have chaperone. Why? Because she sat with the workers. How did I know? She sat with the workers. By the way, this is the reason why the title of our message today is When the Rich Man Dated a Beggar. Verse 14. Because Boaz dated her, sort of. Now, what happens? What happens when the rich man dated a beggar? What happens? Unconditional love. What happens? Grace. The man does not look on what kind of woman she is. He is willing to give to Ruth everything she has. He has everything about he possesses. I mean, Boaz just gave everything to Ruth. He is willing to give her what she does not deserve. And I call this grace. Boaz gave Ruth what Ruth does not deserve. And what happens when a rich man dated a beggar? That's grace. It is said that Boaz is representing the Lord Jesus Christ, who has given much love, given much forgiveness and grace to beggars like you and me. We are all what? We are all spiritual beggars. We don't have ways to earn our way to heaven. But through Christ, although we were sinners, although we were unattractive, although we were helpless, we were given attention by God. We were dated for lunch, so to speak. Like Ruth, we are helpless, hopeless, distressed. But Boaz entered in and gave her hope and everything she needs. So what lesson can we learn? Ruth chapter 2 verse 13. Women and men of character, no matter how good you are, although you are already a man of character, you need a what? You need a redeemer. You need a savior. You just cannot argue that you are good enough. You need someone to redeem you from sin. And that's what Ruth, and what Boaz is doing to Ruth. Although she was a woman of character, she needed a kinsman redeemer. Alright. What happened next? Ruth 2:17-22. So Ruth gathered grain in the field until evening, and when she had beaten it out, she found she had nearly 25 pounds. She took the grain back into town and showed her mother-in-law how much she had gathered. She also gave her the food left over from the meal. Naomi asked her, "Where did you gather all this grain today? Whose field have you been working in? May God bless the man who took an interest in you." So Ruth told Naomi that she had been working in a field belonging to a man named Boaz. What can we learn? Every woman and man of character respect and honor their parents or parents-in-law by sharing with them what they have. That's the third lesson. Women and men of character respect and honor their parents or parents-in-law by sharing with them what they have. I like Ruth. She was able to respect Naomi completely from beginning to end. And Naomi said, "May the Lord bless Boaz. The Lord always keeps His promise to the living and the dead." And she went on, "That man is a close relative of ours, one of those responsible for taking care of us." Then Ruth said, "Best of all, he told me to keep gathering grain with his workers until they finish the harvest." Naomi said to Ruth, yes, daughters, it will be better for you to work with the women in Boaz's field. You might be molested if you went to someone else's field. God, last lesson. God redeems and watches over those who trust Him faithfully. God redeems and trusts and watches over those who trust Him faithfully. You know, Ruth is a book of people who live an ordinary and difficult life. But I tell you, just like Ruth, God will redeem you. God will take care of you if you will just continue to faithfully trust Him. If today you're weeping, maybe yesterday it was a bad day, it will not last very long. For tomorrow, you will be wondering and praising God, just like Ruth. In chapter 1, Ruth was weeping. In chapter 2, God is promoting Ruth. Ruth is now wondering, why is this happening in my life? Yesterday, you might be weeping, but God is faithful. If you will faithfully trust Him, He will take care of you. By the way, Jesus invites you to dine with Him, for He is the bread of life, for He is the water of life. When will you respond to His invitation of dining with Jesus and fellowshipping in His table of love? Ruth did. She dined with Boaz because Ruth knew she needed a Redeemer. You need a Redeemer. You need a Savior. When will you dine with a Savior? God bless you.